Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Self Leadership Podcast. Anna, Florestano, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, both.
Thank you so much for joining us. And Florestano, I wonder if you could kick us off with a lovely introduction.
Sure. I'm Florestano. I'm basically an Italian living in Barcelona, originally from Tuscany, from a port city called Livorno that is very multifaceted and culturally vibrant and has been over the centuries, which gave me a bit of an interpretation of life, which is linked to the notion of being on and off stage or on a theater where everybody and people are interpreting different characters, which is interesting and at the same time allows you to have some freedom for the way you want to live and changing the roles in your life. Professionally, I'm in consulting, brand consulting in Barcelona. So basically, I help companies define the character they want to be and make money out of that, ideally. I have many hobbies. I like to cook. So a bit of creativity, a bit of business, a bit of rational thinking, a bit of everything, really. Left and right side brain thinking.
Oh, I love it. So many facets to dig into potentially. What I would love to hear a bit more about, Florestano, is what you alluded to in the context of Livorno and the different characters that you saw being played. Could you say a bit more about that?
Sure. Well, the city is shaping a bit the way people grow up here. It's a city that was basically created allowing people to freedom of religion, like forgiving their past in the 17th century or something. And that created basically a free port with different cultures, different attitudes toward life. Everyone was bringing something, and that evolved very fast. So you happen to meet people and with different political views, with different ways and habits and cultures and traditions towards life. And so really you see that people behave in an harmonized and standardized ways in certain contexts. But then as soon as you walk off stage, they actually reveal what they really are and how they really feel. And I think that's very healthy and had me inspired in the way I would really like to pursue life, being and choosing to be in a certain way, present in a certain way, in certain contexts, and then retaining the freedom of being yourself in other contexts without necessarily mixing the two things, which is really hard, but at the same time is really true to yourself, which to me should be retained.
Oh, beautiful. So if I'm hearing correctly, what you're saying is that growing up in a city like Livorno really helped you or inspired you to step even more into authenticity. Is that fair to say?
With the compromises that we all have to do with
Of course.
our lives and societies and international living and everything. But yeah, the reality is you are the person you need to spend the most time with yourself. It's healthy to find your own space, to be yourself through yourself and not hide under the masks that society requires all the time. So yeah, I think it's a nice North Star to have, to always try to find a moment or a way to retain some elements of authenticity in all contexts.
Makes sense. I think it's interesting how you've described where you grew up, Florestano, and then you're in this world of consulting now. It feels a little bit like an oxymoron in terms of the lifestyle that you grew up in and what you're trying to create, and then the world of consulting. Like they feel like polar opposites to each other. So it sounds like an interesting balance to try and walk.
Well, to be fair, I mean, the consulting, is still brand consulting and creative industries in the end. So I feel like there is a bit of an angle to it. In any case, it's not the typical, tech consulting or pure business consulting. I mean, I'm in the business part, but still I get to work with meaning, with people, with consumers, with audiences. So there is a bit of psychology in there also of the audience or the target audience. There is a bit of creativity through which you convey what the direction is. So yeah, in a way you have to play the part, of course, which is even interesting. But in the other, you have, I'm lucky to have a bit of freedom to be in a stimulating environment where you have to create really the expression of companies and brands. So in a way, you have to be creative and apply a bit of authenticity there, filtered, but still, you need to trust your guts and to go with what seems to be more appropriate in understanding the context and the nuances and the people you're talking about.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Well, it sounds like where you've grown up has had a huge influence in terms of what you're trying to create with your life. So excited to ask you, what does the idea of living intentionally mean to you, Florestano?
So living intentionally for me has been increasingly meaning to be selectively present. And being selectively present means choosing when to be fully present for others or for myself, whether it's micro moments or macro phases of the life, which means necessarily not trying to juggle many things at once, but like having a clear priority in where you want to focus your attention, how you want to focus your energies. It's more like a switch. It's not always possible to flick the switch. You have to dimmer it sometimes, but ideally it's a bit fighting against this work-life balance, multitasking. You have to balance many things at once, and you risk ending up doing things for the system and not for yourself or for others, right? You risk being absorbed by so many things, and I'm actually trying to refuse that a bit when possible.
I absolutely love your definition of living intentionally, to be honest. In our world where everything is clamoring for our attention, right? And where our attention spans get shorter and shorter because of the phone, the notifications, the email, the 100 million channels where we can be reached, we so seldom still have those moments of presence. And so obviously we hear a lot about the importance of being present, but what I really love is your distinction between presence for yourself and presence for others. That's not something that is kind of often baked into the practice of presence. And I'm very curious to hear, Florestano, how did you arrive at this definition of living intentionally for yourself?
Well, I think I've always been a person that also maybe because of the profession, I've always been immersed in environments where on the one hand, like sports or music, you have to perform. So you are there for others, but in reality, you're there for yourself too, because maybe it's the end of a path, of a journey that you want to celebrate and to have a milestone that is the concert, the rehearsal, the project, the presentation. And so there you're basically in an environment where you are there for multiple audiences at once. And what happened to me was that I was always trying to be there more for others than for myself. So I was depending a lot and framing the way I was in context, mostly just for others. So thinking more about how I would show up in the eyes of others, which is still very important in some contexts, but I realized I was prioritizing that all the time over how I was feeling for myself and with myself about something. And so this is when I, growing up after a while in the workplace and after practicing the various hobbies and activities on the side, I decided that not everything needs to be seen and you don't always need to worry about how you look in the eyes of others all the time. Clearly, you need to be conscious about how you express yourself and what you're saying, but that's not always the priority. And so I created this kind of distinction for myself that is helping navigate between opposites, knowing that it's not always black or white, of course.
I think that's a really, really important lesson for a lot of people, as Anna said. I think, was there like a moment that this kind of like clicked for you where you thought, actually, this is something that I consciously want to practice? Or has it just been something that has become more and more aware to you over time?
I think, to be honest with you guys, the reality is after many projects in my professional life that were ending definitely over time, or the way I was approaching them, telling myself that it was a choice, but it was really not fully a choice. I mean, yeah, it was a choice, but it was, the super ego was there saying, you really need to do this way. I was actually starting to challenge it and understanding whether I could get to the same result in a better way for myself, which doesn't mean to under deliver or do it worse. But it's really the workplace that's with its milestones and its dynamics pushed me to try and find a better focus on whether the activity should be performed for others and what they wanted and what they needed versus the way I was thinking I should deliver something. And so maybe I'm a bit of a perfectionist. So maybe I was over delivering things that I thought were important, but the other party was not necessarily prioritizing. And all of this was coming at the expense of myself in reality, of how I was living the project itself or the journey itself, right? So I think this was mostly due to the professional environment, but it was self-inflicted, I have to say, for most of the time. So the moment was really, after a while, I was a bit overwhelmed by this approach. So I had to reshuffle priorities and readjust the way I was approaching things, which ended up turning fine in the end. But it was more of a self process.
Yeah, that's fair. I think I really resonate with this because essentially what you described is like you're never actually in the real room in this state, are you? Because you're making decisions based on what you think other people want, but you don't actually know that. So like there's no data to tell you that that is the room that you need to be quote unquote performing in. But in the same breath, you are then choosing that outcome not based on what you want either. So you're not even in your own room. And so like the metaphor that I had in my head when I tried to get better at this was you're dancing in a room that no one's in because you're not in it and they're not in it either. And so like, no one really wins from this approach, do they? Unless there's a little bit of fortune that actually you get it right. But it's a lot of energy for what is essentially a guess on what you think the room needs and to expend what you know you don't want. And so like my question to you is, have you seen any notable benefits from getting better at this and practicing being more present?
Sure. The main one is that if you are an analytical person like I am, you tend to overthink, you tend to overstructure all the variables. And as you said, maybe you end up in a room where nobody's there and you're still dancing and performing, or maybe too many people are in there, there's not even the space to do that, and everyone is trying to dance the same way, and so it's either the one or the other. It's the same problem with different configurations. So the main benefit, I would say, is trying to prioritize things, getting better at synthesis rather than just analysis, which is a nice step up because, I mean, synthesizing complex concepts is probably harder than structuring them, but is also what allows you to save time in the long term and also save energy in the long term, and therefore save space for yourself to be more effective in doing other things or effective in doing nothing, which is a very important thing not to do. So effectively, it's allowing you to save useless, wasted energy that otherwise you would waste for something that is in reality not required or maybe not so relevant at the time, but you told yourself it was.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, as I've been listening, one thing that keeps coming up for me is boundaries, right? That in essence, what you've described is becoming a lot more aware of your own boundaries and then starting to communicate your own boundaries, setting your own boundaries very clearly. And what I love is kind of presence as a bridge towards that, as a tool towards understanding more clearly, hey, where are my boundaries? I can only feel them if I'm really present with myself, and then using the energy of that felt sense of that presence to then also clearly communicate the boundaries. I don't know if I read this correctly or not, but I really like where this is going.
Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't need to be, a strong boundary. It's just you're setting yourself for success in reality, right? So you're clarifying expectations, asking a bit more. It's about being constructive in the end. So it's not necessarily like this is my boundary. I won't go one step beyond that. Of course, that's true both in personal and professional life. But it's more like, what do you need from me? What can I do for you? What do I need for myself in this situation, and how can I make a win-win out of this? So it's still a constructive and positive dialogue again, but yeah, the reality is that it's important to understand what comes first and what comes second, not to mix up everything and then ending up in either depleted energy or frustration, depending on the context.
Yeah. And that's, I guess, what the best boundaries are, right? They are firm and at the same time kind and constructive and open. Yeah.
Well, let's dig into a little bit more of how you've been able to improve the skill of being more present for Florestano, because speaking for myself is definitely something I could do with getting better at too. So I'm excited to hear about how to do it. So without further ado, let's move on to your first self-leadership practice, if you will.
Sure. The first practice, I mean, I gave some fancy names. The first practice I've called the traffic cop rule. So the traffic cop rule practice is basically about, if you are in a context where you're having a person in front of you or a group of people in front of you, well, those are your priority. No second screen, no looking at emails, no notifications. This is really about focusing your attention on the people you're having in front, whether it's in person or, for example, now. Put away your phone. Like, don't try to do many things at once. You're there with 2 people or 3 people or how many people in real time. They are there for you. You are there for them. That should be your only priority. I mean, if there is a huge emergency, the emergency will find a way to reach you. But I think it's very healthy to be present with the people you are actually there, no? And the name is coming from the notion that in the street you have many signals. You have the traffic lights, you have the painted stuff on the floor on the street. But then if there is the cop there, the cop is what matters most, and you should ignore all the rest but the cop. So if there is someone that is live with you, that's the priority. No phones. That's an automatic thing. That's like the traffic lights. It doesn't matter in that moment. You can pick that up later if there is no cop anymore. And if there is really an emergency, the phone will find a way to find you. Like, they will call multiple times. I mean, we are all having them close to us. So
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, first of all, let me say I love how your creativity is coming through with the names of the practices. This is amazing. I don't think Josh, we've ever had anyone name all of their practices. I absolutely love it. And your first practice is also super close to my heart because I feel so strongly about this. You know, if somebody's sitting with me and they keep looking at their phone, it completely changes the quality of the interaction, and I start like wondering, is this even relevant for them? Is this interesting? You know, I don't feel seen, I don't feel heard, and it just really decreases the quality of the space together, of the time together. And so I'm wondering, has it ever happened to you that you were with somebody, you know, maybe one to one, and you were giving your full presence and they kept checking their phone? And if that happened,
yes,
how
yes.
how how do you deal with that?
Well, let me start by saying that probably I've done that too. I mean, we're not flawless, of course, but again, it really depends on the context. So if it's a work environment, you're in a meeting with a client, they're checking their emails. I mean, honestly, there's just so much you can do. I mean, really, you just pause, you ask if you want you to repeat, and that's the context. So that's fine. But let's say that in more of a personal space, I tend to wait. Like, the first time I tend to like ignore it, meaning that maybe there's something really relevant they need to get to. If it becomes something that is repeated in the space of a conversation, I'm trying to find a way to say it out loud clearly, meaning that it's not really fulfilling to be in a room with someone that is dividing the attention between you that are there in that moment and somebody or something that is on the phone. And I'm talking about the phone because it's the most intrusive element in this equation. But I also have to say that what really made me think that this is something important is not necessarily my experience living it, but it was like seeing it from outside. Like, when you're in a restaurant, or the other day I was in a street on the street, and there was a couple, like, majestically dressed, beautiful, phenomenal. And each and every like each of them was like on the phone. They were not talking to each other, not looking at each other, like for 10 minutes on the phone. It's speaking about fancy names and coined words that's togetherness, meaning that they are together, but they are not together. And I mean, guys, I mean, you're beautiful, you're young, you're in love, whatever you want. I mean, look at each other. I mean, okay. So that was a bit sad to see, to be honest. And so I don't want to be seen in that situation. I want to be in a picture of someone like that.
I absolutely love
Yeah.
that. Yes.
I was going to say, it is a situation you see all the time, isn't it? You could walk into any any shop or any restaurant and see exactly the same thing. We had it. We went to Hallstatt in Austria at Christmas, and it was just like beautiful, and it was like sunny, but it was snowy, and it was just stunning. And like we were like, oh, we'll sneak into this little bar, just have like a hot chocolate or something, and warm up. And it would be impossible to not have anything to have a conversation with somebody about at that point. And there was three girls sat next on the table next to us who did exactly the same thing. They all had their phone out for the half an hour we were sat in there, and they didn't say a word to each other. And you're like, how could you not have anything to talk about? Like where you've obviously come all the way here from somewhere. It's mind blowing. You've just stepped inside and you don't have anything to say. It's something that we all see, to be fair. My question to you, Florestano, was going to be, how do you break the habit? Because we sat here and moaned about other people. I also do it, and it's hard to stop. So, like, how have you been able to actually break this habit and get better at it yourself?
Well, first of all, I don't have notifications on my phone. Like, nothing. None.
Not even WhatsApp
Well,
or something?
probably WhatsApp, that is just a notification that says that someone wrote me something, but I don't have the preview of what the content is. So I need to actively open the app, etc. I mean, if it's about work, I'm on the laptop all the time. So if I'm not, it's because I'm in a meeting. So I'm in a meeting. So I'm not. And if there is an emergency, someone will call again. And all the rest, I mean, why would I? Instagram is not that important. Social media in general is not that important. Nothing is all that important, to be fair. It's free time. So if it's free time, I'll deal with it when I'm free. That's a very oversimplistic way of looking at it, I realize. But I mean, I need easy tricks. I'm a simple guy. So I need to either be on or off, right? That's all about it. And being on and off about things is still two options. If you multiply it for all the things that we have to do in a day, is actually very nuanced. In already being black or white about things, at the end of the day, it gives a very precise shade of gray, quote unquote, for very famous books. So in the end, that helps me at least. I try to keep it as much as possible. Then, of course, there are exceptions, meaning that, of course, if I know that I'm going to trip or I have to organize, whether it's leisure or business. And in that moment, I know that there is a train to catch and I will forget, or I have to. So you can selectively, again, choose that phone to be present for you with aggressive notifications. But again, I try to have it in a discrete way and not continuous way. So I deactivate them right away, or like even the Ryanair app. I deactivate the notifications as soon as I've done the flight because I don't want the push notifications. So it's distracting. Also, it can create anxiety to certain people. I'm not in that space, but like being asked constant attention in moments that are not predetermined and everything seems urgent, it distracts you from stuff, creates anxiety. You don't need that.
Yeah, but it's like I know so many people who would agree with, social media is not important, right? They would absolutely sign their name under that sentence, and still the push or the pull or whatever it is to keep checking is big, like I know for myself, like I have the one social media that I have is LinkedIn, and it's like it's useless, right? In most of the time, and still I find myself, I don't know, like 5 times a day, just randomly opening the LinkedIn app, instead of being present with myself and for myself, like, and so I guess, yeah. How do you translate social media is not that important to I'm actively practicing presence for myself and others and stopping myself from checking LinkedIn for the 5th time?
No, that is I'm unable to do, of course. But I mean, precisely because we are already checking in multiple times the social media, whenever we are free, we tend to check them already.
Yeah.
So I don't want even the push to check it when I don't want to check it. I mean, I'm already dependent, addict enough to socials that I don't even need the social to come to me. I'm already going to it. So enough. It's actually a boundary that is not really a boundary because I'm going there anyways. But this is really about not allowing. I mean, they are controlling me to a degree because I'm going there, but at least I have the illusion of self-control. Like I'm determining when I'm going there, which is not true, but well, I'm more determining when I'm going there if I don't receive notifications that if I even receive the notifications, I'm going there and they are coming to me a bit too much. So let's call it a mitigation strategy because that's what really is.
That's fair. I was going to call it limiting instead of avoiding.
Again, I mean, the switch doesn't always work, right? So I was saying it at the beginning, it's a dimmer
That's
light.
fair. Well, I really like this one, so I'm excited to hear the second practice, and let's see what funky name you've given it as well.
So the funky name for the second one is the full seat rule. Which means that basically if you are in an environment and you're seated, again, it can mirror a bit the first one to a degree, but it means that you really need to occupy the space you are given or you have taken. So if you are in a place, you be in that place with a purpose. If you are in a meeting, be in that meeting either active speaking, actively seeking a dialogue, or actively listening, or actively possibly choosing not to be there and like finding a way not to be in that meeting. The worst thing that can happen is is a stereotype again. The famous sentence this meeting could have been an email that we have always heard. That's an absolute reality in corporate life. And sometimes you will have to be there for presentialism and presenteeism. That's the reality of it. But whenever possible, I deeply believe that if you are in a meeting, you need to be in that meeting for something, for a reason. And that reason can be either having something to say or actively listening, because it's not always about speaking. But the reality is that if you are there just for being there, can you find a way not to be there? So actively choosing not to be there, because being there just because they put something in your calendar and joining passively, that's the best way to waste your time and waste your energy and waste your focus again that you can have. Is the same level of having LinkedIn notifications in your professional life. And that happens also in personal life. When you have group gatherings and you're going there because you feel like you have to go, but you don't know anybody, you are not actively trying to socialize. So you're basically standing there waiting for time to pass so that, oh, finally the event is over. Sometimes you have to do it, but well, one of the practices is trying to avoid a situation where you're basically there in a limbo, not knowing what you're doing there. You know why you're there, but you don't know what you have to do with it. So that's for me is another practice that I'm trying to to exercise over time consistently.
You've preempted my question that was going to follow towards the end, because I was going to ask whether this also applies in social situations, outside of work. And I'd love to dig into that in a bit more detail. As you say, sometimes there are social gatherings and you know why you're there. It might be the, I don't know, engagement party of a family member or whatever, right? And so there is this like social obligation to be there. If we look at your practice, what's the no social obligation to be there, Josh? I'm seeing you shake your head.
We've had this conversation so many times. I'm reliving it over and over again. But you carry on. There's a perceived
Yes.
obligation.
The perceived obligation. True that. But yeah, Florestano, my question to you is: say that scenario comes up. What practically then? What will you do? How will you go about that? What's your strategy?
I have to confess, I haven't figured this out yet. Meaning that there's one thing that I really love, there's one thing that I really hate. The one thing that I really love is to talk about ideas and things that can happen in the future and or shared interest in the present, or even meet new people that are interested in getting to know each other. But in those settings, basically none of that is really the point. So you're there to talk about cliches, small talk, that stuff, which for me is like the gossip. Jesus, if I had to choose between being sentenced to death or spending the eternity talking about gossip and small talk, I definitely know my choice. It's like the one thing that it's even worse. Then I choose to actively go and have a walk that lasts for a couple of hours. And then when I'm back, if we are at the banquet or we are eating around the table, I haven't figured it out. So I usually tend to put up a show again, like we're talking about the theater before. So I decided that we are going to talk about something. I'm going to propose a topic, and everyone is participating. So I'm going to ask questions to all the table around a certain topic. And if they don't like it, they can counter propose with something or choose to be absent in that context. But like, if nobody's proposing a topic or they are just staying there, we have to look at each other in the eyes, talking about nothing. Okay, now I'm coming up with a topic and we are going to talk about that. If you have something better to propose, you're more than welcome. But at least we have something that we agree being the topic of the conversation around the table, because otherwise it's all about, oh, what your breed is your dog? Oh, how old is it? Oh, mine fascinating. Oh, mine jumps. Mine sits. Oh, mine prefers tuna and not salmon. No, enough. Genuinely, I cannot.
It's like talking to myself. I think I found my soulmate.
Exactly. Do you want to talk about geopolitics or, I don't know, 19th century history in continental Europe? Phenomenal. But like the flavor of the cat food is not really something that we can talk about for half an hour for me. For me. Then if something else, someone else wants to talk about it, I'm very happy to be absent in that conversation.
That's fair. Well, I did find one way of getting out of this, if it's worth sharing, if we're having this as a
Yes,
conversation, even though it's not
please.
Florestano's answer. It's not 100% accurate, but I found that it does work the vast majority of the time. So I'll give the example that we use. I used it as it was a leaving party. So someone was moving away, leaving their job, and it was a party, which to me, like Florestano said, it's like, I've got no interest in going to this at all. It's not something I want to spend my energy doing. It's too many people. It's too loud. Like, it's not what I want to choose to do. However, like, I do understand like there is a need to like say goodbye or like like play ball with the spirit of the party. And so, what I've tried to find myself doing is find like the least objectionable alternative. So, like, what I found worked is like I said to them, "I'm really sorry. Like, I can't make the party, but I definitely want to make the time to say bye. Like, can we go for lunch next week?" And like, I can absolutely stomach the hour lunch because like actually they're a good person. Like I can go and do the lunch, and therefore like they actually feel like I've like given my energy to the occasion, for lack of a better word. It's not like I've just boycotted this whole event and I was like, oh, I didn't get to say bye to Josh. Like I still did that, but I was just like, able to like at least shoehorn it into a situation where like I felt both people were quite comfortable. Like there are still some examples where I can't do that,
Like
like a
weddings.
wedding,
How do
like a
you do it
wedding.
for a wedding?
Yeah.
I mean, for a funeral, even.
But I found that for most situations I can find like a least objectionable alternative, and like it's not foolproof, but it has helped me because this is a practice that I've tried to get good at too.
And that's brilliant, I think. I mean, in the end, it's all about choosing how to reframe the
Yeah,
occasion, which is an active proposal, which is phenomenal. But the whole point of this, which is you want to be there for others, like you want to be
yeah,
present for others in this context. And so you should be present in a way that if it's for others, it should be in the way that allows them to enjoy you the most if you are
yeah,
really there for others and not just as a number, right? So, well, it's really interesting, actually. I think applies to many occasions apart from
yeah.
weddings and funerals. Uh,
If you see Florestano, Josh, and I declining all social invitations in the future, you know why we're doing it. But we will propose high quality one-on-one time instead.
exactly,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and high quality conversation while doing. I like it. Well, the two have been great so far. I feel like I want to accelerate through these because I feel like I'm learning a lot myself going through them. So, yeah, without further ado, Florestano, what is practice number 3?
So we are moving from the two practices that are more related to the others, so the traffic cop rule and the full seat rule, to the ones that are more related to yourself, like oneself. which are actually 2 for others and 3 for yourself on purpose. So I wanted to give a bit more space to the yourself part, because it's the one that gets the most neglected, I think, despite being in a society that praises individualism and stuff, but individualism for others, not for yourself. So the first one in this context is, I called it, again with a funky name, anti-performance physicality or something like that, which is the reality of staying connected to your body, exercising, doing sport, yoga, meditation, whatever you want. I mean, this is mostly about sport, like that requires some physical energy, without necessarily turning this into a compound activity. That is becoming another KPI for performance. If you do sports, you may practice the sports for a number of reasons. It may be to reconnect with your body after a day of intellectual work. It can be to stay healthy. It can be to build a more aesthetic physique, whatever. It can be a mix of them, etc. So you need to do it properly. But the reality is, for the level and the degree of intensity most of us practice sport, you don't really need to overlay all the level of tracking of performance, all the level of balancing activities like you get calories, the macros. Yes, of course, more or less you need to know, but you're not a professional bodybuilder. And again, there are phases in life. So if you're really excited about building the perfect physique or whatever, you need to stick to that. That becomes a project, though. We are not talking about sports and physicality as a project now. This is more about in a daily routine. And so really the idea is, if you practice any sport, learn the basics, learn what is needed to succeed, because otherwise it becomes frustrating for you if you are not able to reach the goal, whatever it is that you have given, the purpose that you have given to that activity. But like trying to avoid overlaying, again, the sport with nutrition, with tracking, with heartbeat monitoring, etc. I mean, people went to run and jog on the seaside forever, and they were not tracking the heartbeat every now and then and comparing the chart of how the heartbeat has evolved over the past 5 months. I mean, what's the point in it? I mean, if you look at the chart, phenomenal. But if you use it as an information tool to improve the performance, that becomes, again, you're making of something that is very punctual and has one purpose, something that is part of an analytical system that defines your life, which for me is not the purpose of sport. For me, then someone is an athlete, a professional athlete, then the story is different. But
So that obviously piques my curiosity as to what your purpose is in relation to sport. What's your driving force to exercise?
my driving force is simply to be healthier, because being in the business, I tend to spend most of my day seated for long hours in constant meetings. And so all I want from sport is to disconnect my mind and feel my body again, possibly avoiding all the unpleasant surprise it comes with age, being seated. So I actually began in a very soft way with yoga, because for me it was mostly about disconnecting the mind. I'm switching now into more classic gym activities, because I'm feeling the need for more body and physical exercise rather than more the disconnecting the mind. Maybe also because of the practices, so those helped a bit. So that's the main goal. And then, of course, if you lift weights or whatever it is, you probably want to also look a bit better, because once you do it, why not do it properly again? But the objective is to feel better with myself, full stop. It's not to build a phenomenal physique. That's a nice externality if it happens. And I mean, you need to change a bit your nutrition, etc. But I don't weight the food. I mean, I know that I have to eat in a certain way. I know that I need to do certain exercises, more or less. The point with this is really not making of something that should be for your body, something that is not actually just for your body, but is adding layers of structuring the mind over the body, if the purpose of the body is just to disconnect from the mind, Otherwise, you're going back to root one. You're back to square one.
Yeah, yeah. That last bit that you just said, that really helped this click into place or fall into place for me. That it's like, yes, by all means, do it well, enjoy it, look at all aspects, but don't forget to keep the focus in mind. And the focus in mind is to be more in the body and not to create this like analytical mind structure and narrative about how the body needs to improve.
To synthesize it in one sentence, maybe, and sorry to cut you through, but it came to mind and I think it works. It's like, if you do it, believe in it, but like, don't get obsessed with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like it. I like it. I have some secret intel about Josh. I know that Josh has approached topics like this in quite an analytical manner before. I don't know if that's still the case, but so I'm very curious to hear, Josh, what your take is on Florestano's practice.
Yeah, it is a good question. And I think it actually follows exactly what he said. Whereas the period where I approached it very analytically was when it was a priority in my life. It got to the point where it needed to be a priority. Like I wasn't happy, I wasn't feeling healthy. And so I decided, okay, this is my priority. It wasn't work, but this is my priority. And, I will move work around to fit this in because this is my priority. And Florestano spoke about that. So for that period, I did approach it analytically, and no surprise, it did work. The ironic part of it is that was the period where I enjoyed it less. But at that point, that wasn't why I was doing it. So I felt this is true to what Florestano was saying because I wasn't there to enjoy it. The purpose was for it to work, and it did. Interestingly, after I finished that period and it went back, it completely reversed. And so, like, I'm trying to find somewhere in the middle because I'm someone who is either really in or really out. And so when it's not my focus, it almost completely disappears. So like where you find me at the moment is trying to find some form of happy medium where I'm able to keep the consistency, I'm able to keep the reminder of why I'm doing it, but it's not so intense that the thing I'm doing for pleasure becomes a stress. And I haven't found that balance yet, but I know I can do all in and I know I can do all out. I just need to find somewhere in between.
Amazing.
Ideally, I've always been very proud of not being a gym rat in the past. Now I'm not a gym rat, but I'm much more a gym rat than I was. So I had to convince myself that that was the right choice for me. Age helped because you start feeling things that you were not feeling before and say, okay, maybe I have to go. But beyond that, what was really working for me is that this needs to become part of my routine, not for 1 month, not for 2, not for 3, like forever, more or less.
Yeah.
And so I want to frame it from the start in a way that is actually a routine that I feel like I can honor. And if I start approaching it in a super analytical way, restricting everything, weighting everything, okay, I will do it for a while because I have to learn the mechanism. But like after 2 months, I understood the basics, then I can improve, I will improve. It will take more time to improve, like doing it on the go entrepreneurially rather than studying and applying, but whatever. This is definitely more sustainable over the long run than approaching it super analytically for me, for what the purpose was. And that was the only way I could actually stick to it for a while. If I had approached it like I would approach it if it was a project, and if I went back to my analytical mind, probably I wouldn't be able to sustain it for more than 3 months, because then it becomes again obsessive, and for me it wouldn't work. So maybe it's about thinking long term a bit about what you want to be the routine for yourself.
Yeah, that's fair. And the part that I struggle with as well is when life gets busy, like work gets crazy, or like obviously I'm a parent as well, so that throws routines out. It's like that's the first thing to disappear. And I think that's the part that I really struggle with, is that I can't really say no to work. I definitely don't want to say no to my son. So like it's difficult, and that's the part that I now really struggle with. It's the easy thing to get rid of. And so ironically, like the previous practice, what I'm trying to create now is like a least objectionable version of it. It's like, what can I still do even if the day is chaos? And I think that will help keep it more balanced, as opposed to being like, oh, I've got a period where I can be all in and now I'm completely all out. Like having something that is a a bare minimum that you can stick to, I think would be helpful.
Yeah, and also because being a parent, I'm not a parent, but I imagine that going back to the first practice, the cop is very clear who is the cop in the room. So
Yeah,
and the cop
exactly.
appears and disappears. So you cannot really. It's it's very clear that you cannot really control and schedule when the cop is coming. So
No, exactly. Exactly. He's not old enough to come to the gym yet either, so I can't leave him. I can't leave him here, or yeah, it does become a challenge. But I think
yeah.
it's a really powerful message, regardless. So let's move on to your penultimate practice, Barcelona. I'm excited to hear about practice number 4.
So the funky name for this one is the greater picture check. And I think it's about mostly either looking back or looking up when you feel a bit lost or disconnected or purposeless. Like, I'm doing this because I like it. I'm doing this because this is what I can do. I'm doing this because this is what I've been doing. Why am I doing whatever I'm doing? And it goes a bit back to the routine one in the end, is think long term, because the great things need time to happen, but also like look back and put things in perspective so that you don't feel trapped too much in the constant and current situation without knowing how you got there. That after all, if you look back, it helps you realize that it more or less makes sense. Maybe the situation is not so like random. Also, it allows you to appreciate the journey that you have taken in terms of growth, because in the end, we are so focused in the present with the problems of the current day, or the relationships we're having with others today, that I don't think we honor enough how we got here. And so in general is trying to find the logic on where you are by looking where you're coming from, what your values are, etc. That is actually allowing you to understand that you today are the result of a number of choices that are actually free choices or not free choices, because not all choices are free, but like things happen for a reason, including things that you were not expecting. And this is more related to the looking back. And then the looking up is more about the fact that sometimes if you will feel overwhelmed, it's more than enough to have a walk, go on the balcony, look at the stars, at the sky, something that is big and has been there forever and will be there for much longer than us, and say, okay, let's put things in perspective. Going out and looking at whatever the scenery, the stars, or etc., can help you in putting things in perspective. I mean, our life will matter mostly just for ourselves, just for the ones close to us, mostly just for our generation, and not even all of it, because just a fraction of the people will get to know us. In a couple of generations, nobody will even know that we were there in the first place. So on the one hand, this can be sad, but on the other is very reassuring, because it doesn't put you in the mindset of having a sunk cost fallacy problem. You feel much more free to quit things, change things, reassess the level of energy you want to put into things. Because in the end, if you put things in perspective, we are there for what, 80 years? In 120, 130, nobody will even know our sense of humor, how we looked like in reality when we moved, what we were about, so how we were thinking, what we were thinking. So looking back allows you to understand how you got to a certain point and give some context for where you are if you feel lost. And looking up allows you to be potentially reassured about the fact that if you want to change the level of energy you put into something or change the way you do things, yeah, that you might lose something, but that something is really nothing in the context of the world, the universe, the history. So we should probably be a bit more indulgent with ourselves in that.
Makes sense. And out of interest, what does this look like practically? Like, is this something that you kind of check in with when you feel yourself a little bit lost in this journey? Is it something that you kind of schedule as a like weekly or monthly, that you sit and do these reflections? Like, yeah, what does this look like day to day for you?
But for me, this is a more of an emergency check, right?
Right.
So this for me is the last resort when if I don't manage to be present for myself well enough, probably I'm starting to build tensions, build and build and build tensions, and when I'm exhausted, Then at the point I go out, I take like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, doesn't take long, and you reset a bit your way of thinking about your life, where you are, how you got there, if that is what you want to do, how you want to do it. So that is for me a bit of a reset mode to then re-exercise even more the practices, if you will, and maybe being present. Probably that is the moment where I reassess the energy level that I want to put into being present for myself, and how to be present and when for the others. So it's more of a handbrake for the system rather than an appointment. But then I have to say that in this, any activity that is about questioning yourself, whether it's yoga, whether it's meditation, whether it's psychology, that is giving you a habit of thinking about the bigger picture and yourself. Probably there is, in my case, this is the moment, like the emergency mode, but there is an habit that is more about dedicating some time about reassessing how I feel weekly, I would say, about myself, about the context, hopefully without ever getting to this greater picture check that happens, if I have to say, less than one per quarter, which is good.
And say, Florestano, say somebody is listening to this podcast and thinking, hey, I could use more of this. I could use doing a more regular check-in with myself, kind of, stepping out and taking a bit of more of a meta view onto my life and my routine. Do you have any recommendations as to what a good starting point would be?
I mean, it's a very basic one, but I think that if you live in a urban area, noise is something that is really killing the possibility to reconnect with yourself and think deeply. So,
Mhm.
I mean, how to practice it? Go somewhere where there's not a lot of noise, ideally outside, ideally not a lot of people. Turning off the phone is a must, because if you start and Instagram starts, then it's all going to waste. For me, this is really a solo activity that should happen outside, and ideally not with a lot of noise. Then if you are in the Monument Valley or in a place that has been formed in 5 million years, fantastic, because you can see that actually the levels, the layers in the stone, and you're like, okay, I'm here. Like here is like 5 trillion years ago, and it's 10 centimeters. So that helps you visualize how useless we are, which is very reassuring again. Uh, but if not, I mean, any hill, any beach, you can find be a bit poetic and find some metaphors in the water that comes and goes and all flows. Or I mean, I'm sure everyone can can relate better to one element or the other. But yeah.
Beautiful. I love the idea of using the natural elements as a way to like realize how insignificant in many ways our struggles are, or not necessarily to say they're insignificant, right? Because they still signify a lot to us, but just to put it a bit into context, to step out a bit and to be able to look at ourselves and our life as a witness, as opposed to always being fully in it and going with every single like gust of the wind and every single current.
But if you want, I mean, on the other hand, I mean, this can sound a bit cliche and banal, I know, but we are really the only animal that doesn't want to be an animal and try to build a society that is not reflecting that of the animals. Or, well, we are adding so many social layers onto that, that sometimes, I mean, it's just probably going back to the basics. So going back to how you feel about yourself in the context where you are, looking at the context you're in, how it looks, it evolves, etc. So it is active observation of the surroundings and an active study of yourself in the context, without adding all the layers that humanity and only humanity brought to the world. So probably, rather than greater picture check, is canceling humanity side check to a degree, meaning that you put everything in perspective. We are the only ones that are trying to achieve more and more because we have to create stuff, etc. And sometimes is nice, even just for a blink of an eye, not to have to create anything and just to go back to what, as an animal, you're supposed to do, which is live, and that's it.
Gosh, I
Well
can
said.
feel my body like relaxing as you speak, you know?
Which is fascinating because it happens like 10 minutes 3 times a year. So it's like half an hour a year, but that 10 minutes are very intense.
Makes sense. Well, what a good way to round off that fourth practice. And I have a feeling that we've saved the best till last. Let's see if I'm right.
Your favorite, Josh. So the fifth one is a very cliche again. It's the tomato pasta philosophy, which, being an Italian, is a very defining element of my life. I feel most Mediterranean people will agree with that, which is all about enjoying the journey, really. Meaning that we are all obsessed with the destination. We want to get here. I mean, we are moving from one practice to the other with a nice link there. But we are so obsessed about the destination that we forget about the journey. So the tomato pasta philosophy is all about, listen, cooking a healthy meal for yourself, simple, but is an act of care for yourself and for your loved ones, like a tomato pasta. It takes 20 minutes. It doesn't change where you're going to get, but it really changes the way you are going to get there in terms of mood, in terms of slowing a bit down the pace. Instead of eating, the rancid sandwich in front of a screen every day. And this, again, everybody does it, but it's a matter of a habit. If the majority of the time you find a way or find a moment to cook, or even reheat something that you cooked the night before, doesn't really matter, but like, take 20 minutes to eat. If you cannot find 20 minutes in your day to eat, sitting at the table and talking with someone, if you live with someone, or even alone, but like eating a proper meal, then you have an organizational problem of your life. That's not, I mean, there's no excuse for that. Everybody can find 20 minutes. It may not be at 12:30, but in the range between 12:30 and 2:30, you have to find 20 minutes on average. And if you're on a work trip or whatever, your travel doesn't really matter. But it's same thing at dinner. This multitasking life is actually not for us, meaning for us as individuals. This is for someone else. I cannot believe that we cannot find 20 minutes to eat and disconnecting from what we're doing. That is a priority. That is the only thing that you will remember. That you have enjoyed the meals. I mean, if you like that, if you treat food as a function element, then probably not. But then I suggest to reconsider.
And so what's the most important element for you about this practice? Is it stillness? Is it presence? Is it connecting with yourself and other? Is it disconnecting from what was going on before? What's kind of the top number one element for you?
No, I made the example of cooking and the pasta because it's also easy to communicate. But the reality is, whatever it is to always find a way to create a moment of pure joy and presence for yourself and
Mm,
others in a day,
mm,
and not always being absorbed in duties and activities that are mostly for others. And whether it's pasta, whether it's doing other things, that doesn't really matter. I mean, for me, it's food because it's in between two moments, it's disconnecting. You have been working before, and then you cook something is a completely different activity that allows me to disconnect. Food is also culture, so it's also a way to spread the way I feel like nutrition should be that day with someone that I love, etc. So food is a very nice excuse, but it doesn't need to be food, of course. This is really about finding some joy in very small acts. Going and preparing your coffee with a mocha or whatever it is like 5 minutes, really. And sipping the coffee is what? 1 minute and a half. But when you sip the coffee, you don't sip it in front of the computer. You sip it somewhere else. Like, You just separate the moments. It's micro clusters, but also you stand up and you have a walk, which you should do every 20 minutes. I highly doubt, dear viewers, that you are going to stand up and have a walk every 20 minutes. So find your excuse.
Well, we're 65 minutes in and no one stood up for a walk yet. So all three of us are failing.
So I'm actually going for a 5 kilometers walk right after.
To make up.
Compensate. Yeah.
I was actually thinking whether this would be best. I mean, the interview would be better doing it standing up or sitting down. So I've been thinking about it. Then I thought that maybe 1 hour and a half standing up, then I had to move the computer.
But fair, it was a consideration. We will
Yeah.
take note of that.
Yeah.
But really, Florestano, what I'm hearing you say is that it's all about creating pockets where you allow yourself to simply be, to not be doing, but just to allow yourself a bit of being. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, and again, the reality is that either, I mean, for being, that can be expressed also through doing, but doing in a different way, different things. Because I mean, not all of us are built to, lay down and stay in the sun 10 hours without doing anything. I'm really jealous of those who can. I really cannot. But at least you change the purpose, you change the activity, you change the mindset, you change what you're doing. You're already changing for things. And this is just making a cup of coffee, which is fascinating.
Yeah, I really like this one, but it's actually very similar to a value of mine. It was in my podcast, Florestano. Like my phraseology for this was making the ordinary extraordinary, and just trying to find ways of like just making every day a little bit better and being more intentional. I think it really does change how you think about how you go about your day. And it's been really interesting to watch it rub off on my son as well, because like he doesn't actually know that he's doing it yet, but he does do it, which is pretty cool. So I really resonate with this one, which is why it is my favorite, because I think it's the most simple to do, but I think it has arguably like the smallest input, but arguably the biggest upside of everything that we've discussed today. I think it's a really good practice.
It ties back to the importance of defining a routine that doesn't need to be perfect, but it just needs to work. And the perfection comes from the actually making it happen consistently rather than making it happen perfectly every single time. And this one, I think, like the sport one, are more about volume than value, let's say, of the single episodes, let's say, of the single happening. They improve the way you live your life. You, in the end, you will remember the destination when you get there. But then when you think back wherever you have been getting, you are going to remember the journey. And if the journey has been shared with the people you love, talking about stuff, enjoying a good glass of wine in front of something, nice scenery, or having a coffee or whatever, then you're going to remember the social moments. And the social moments often happen through food. And this is why the name of that.
I love it. Well, what a great place to end. I've really enjoyed every one of the practices today. The names in particular, obviously, have brought a smile to our face as well. So for our listeners, Florestano, could you give us a quick summary of your 5 self-leadership practices?
So the first one is the so-called traffic cop rule, which is about prioritizing the person you have in front, dedicating your full attention, basically avoiding any distraction coming from phones or surroundings, unless there is an emergency, of course. The second one is what I called the full seat rule, which means that if you occupy a seat at a table or a figurative table, be there for a reason, whether it's active dialogue, whether it's active listening, or whether it's active absence. So ideally choosing not to be there. Clearly, this is not always possible, but ideally you want to be there with a purpose. The third one is more about yourself and is what I call the anti-performance physicality, which is really if you're taking care of your body for a reason, let that reason be the only reason or the main reason you're actually doing it. If it's about feeling healthy, let's not overcomplicate and over-engineer sports with 20,000 tracking of things. If that is the purpose, instead, we know that we have to behave differently, but like not over-engineering even what is disconnecting from the mind. The fourth one is what I call the greater picture check, which is about putting things in perspective every now and then when you feel lost or you don't really know what you're doing or overwhelmed, is looking back can help you make sense of where you are and why you ended up where you are. And looking up can help you in understanding that if you really want to redirect your energy, change things, etc., yeah, you might lose something, but that something is not that relevant in the context of life, the universe, history, yourself, at least most of the times. And so this allows a bit more flexibility and indulgence with with really what you want to do for yourself. And the last one is the tomato pasta philosophy, which is all about finding moments, micro moments even, of pure presence and joy for yourself and the people you love. So identifying micro pockets of time that you dedicate to things you like, that you share with others, that you love every day. And the most important part is to do that every day rather than doing it perfect all of the times.
Amazing. Thank you for the summary, and yeah, thank you so much for the preparation, the openness, and your time discussing all of these things with us today. I think one of the things that stands out for me is that when Anna and I put the idea for the podcast together, we wanted it to be super practical. And I think this is the second time we've had it where actually the only thing you need for every practice is yourself. So I just feel personally like I love it when it's that practical that you don't even need anything other than a little bit of thinking space, brain power to get it in action. So yeah, thank you so much for your time. It's been a great episode today.
Thank you so much, Florestano.
Thanks, guys. Hope this helps.
Cool. And we obviously hope that you enjoyed it as listeners as well. And we look forward to welcoming you back to the next episode of the Self Leadership Podcast. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.